Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and we got another good one for you today. Today, we're actually connecting with Brandon Maddox. Brandon is the founder and CEO of Silencer Central, based out of South Dakota. They make an amazing product, and they basically simplify the entire process of getting a silencer. So check them out for sure. But Brandon, thank you very much for jumping on the podcast. I know you're a very busy guy, but he is a newer hunter, but he still has some amazing adventures. So today, he tells us a couple crazy stories from his most recent trip to Africa involving hyenas, lions, giraffes, all sorts of crazy stuff. So, Brandon, thank you very much. To listeners, again, get out there, make sure you do vote, but more importantly, actually not more importantly, but equally as important is bring one person with you. Let's go ahead and kick this thing off now and let Brandon tell you his stories. Thank you. All right, Brandon, welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. How are you doing, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, man, I'm of course happy to have you here. I know we had a quick meeting of the minds before this, like a couple weeks back, and I'm excited to hear some of the stories that you kind of just sort of prefaced for me as we were setting that thing up. But let's do this. Let's take one step back. Brandon, why don't you introduce yourself so the folks know who they're going to be hearing some stories from today?
Yeah, absolutely. So Brandon Maddox, based in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I am the founder and CEO of Silencer Central. We have stores in 42 states, and we're kind of famous for mailing the silencer to your front door once it's approved. So you can kind of buy it from your couch and have it shipped to your front door without ever leaving your house.
That's awesome. I actually have a buddy who he talked his dad into buying a couple from you guys. So.
Oh, perfect.
And actually, I got a new Christensen Firearms Ridgeline FFT in 300 Win Mag, and he's got the silencer from you guys that I'm going to put on there for an elk hunt we're going to go on in November. So I'm pretty excited to
awesome.
Check your silencers out, man. But let's, how long have you been hunting? Is it your entire life, or you know, what spurred this passion?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, my dad did not hunt. So growing up, I would say I didn't have probably a ton of opportunities to hunt. I would say that it was in my genetic pool, though, because my uncle was a big hunter, and also my mom's dad, so my grandfather. And, I would say squirrel hunting in the yard and stuff like that, at a young age, using the, BB gun, for, younger age, but I would say like really, really getting into hunting, to be honest with you, maybe like the last 3 or 4 years, just because, I used to have a day job. I'm a pharmacist by trade, and I would do my day job in this. So I started Silencer Central in 2005. So, when I was doing the starting Silencer Central and then also working in the pharmaceutical industry, I didn't have too much time. And then I had kids, but I'd say as my kids have gotten older, and I can easier to justify taking off time during the week if it's work related. And then of course the benefit of being able to expense it through the business, because typically you're with other industry people. Yeah. I've really gotten into it really in the last 3 or 4 years. No one's complained at my house that I'm into it too much, but at times I wonder if, not yet. I've got a lot of totes as people send me free gear and shirts and all this other stuff in the industry. I've got totes that I'm convinced at some point my wife's going to say, all right, this has got to go.
Yeah, that's too funny.
So I'd say mostly like the last 3 or 4 years, but I would say mostly in the last 3 or 4 years, it's been big game. Before I would say it would have been smaller game, basically high school dove hunting. And, then when I moved to South Dakota, I did really get into pheasant hunting just to try to honestly get in better with the culture of my wife. And then I actually enjoyed it. So, hang out with my wife's family and stuff like that. But I would say big game is more recently.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm an adult onset hunter too, and I never thought about it saying it was in the gene pool. But yeah, my mother's father, he hunted a little bit of whitetail, a lot more of like quail and stuff like that, and pheasants in Kansas. So similar. And then I went to school for pharmacy. I ended up going through it and then deciding I didn't like biology enough to complete the path, and ended up jumping over to a different major. But when I started at University of Colorado, I was like, I'm gonna be a pharmacist. So that's funny. We got a lot in common, Brandon.
That's cool.
Yeah, but let's dive into it. People aren't here to hear about my educational background or yours. They want to hear some hunting stories. So you got a couple years to pull from. Why don't you set the stage on the first story?
I would say, it's funny because they asked me this at lunch. I do a CEO lunch every month where people can kind of, there's no there's no organizational structure there. It's basically anyone in the organization has a birthday this month, they get to have, lunch with me, and they can ask whatever question they want. And
Yeah.
one guy asked me about hyena hunting, and I don't know why, but for some reason, I went wolf hunting in January of this year up in Canada, and I shot like two wolves in the first 20 minutes in the blind. So it's not really a great story, but it sort of primed me. It sort of primed me for wanting a hyena. I don't know why, but just like you see guys on Facebook, they shoot a hyena. You're like, oh my god, it looks like so exotic and cool and crazy and
Yeah.
spooky and just weird, like a dinosaur type thing. So yeah, I just got back from Africa a couple weeks ago. I went to Zimbabwe,
Okay.
and the goal was to shoot a leopard and a lion, and I didn't find any leopards big enough. I found two lions, but in the interim of trying to, get the leopard, I decided I became obsessed with trying to get a hyena, just because there was a lot of other camps near us that were also trying to hunt hyena. It just kind of created this sort of top of mind, like, man, that looks cool. So
They're a cool critter too, right? Don't they have like the most powerful jaws of like any land mammal or something, like them and gators
yeah,
or something? If
yeah, and I
gators
guess
are considered land
when
mammals.
I was reading about them, what interested me too was that they could crush bone. So, so part of it was we had put some like bait out. So of course they started baiting for the lions and leopards before I got there, and they'd used domestic animals. Like they bought cows and they bought donkeys, and they were putting them out there. And as they had parts of stuff that was left over, they were throwing it out almost like as a side pile. And the hyenas were getting into it, and they were like crushing bones and stuff. And I'm like, man, this is kind of cool. I kind of think
Yeah.
I would almost rather do the hyena than the leopard, but it became an obsession where like every night we would go out after dark and we would call hyenas. And the hard part was I downloaded the sounds off a YouTube video, and I basically just cut it to just the sound, and then we had to get a speaker made and like build this thing because that wasn't the original plan.
Yeah.
And then um, the hard part was I had thermal binoculars, but I didn't have a thermal scope, so it became a little bit like, all right, so if we do see one, we call it in. How are we actually going to kill it? And I think we had one spotlight that was a leopard spotlight that turned red, but somehow it fell off the truck and got run over. So at this point, we've got nothing but like a bright white, scope. So I'm thinking this. I'm thinking I'm spending this much money. It feels like a little ghetto, duct tape, and I don't know. I was getting nervous, but so we went out for like 4 or 5 nights in a row hunting hyenas, and you turn the call on, and the hard part is like you're in a truck, so you're like, okay, do we stay in the truck? And the moon was kind of bright, so the problem is, well, they come up and then they see the truck and then they disappear, and needless to say, every night we did something wrong. First we started with bait, trying to
Sounds
bring
like
them into
hunting.
bait. Yes, totally, totally. And then we brought the dead pile where you drag it around and do the dead drag to try to bring them in. We had a bunch of intestines from other animals we had shot, and we were dragging that around. That's usually what brought the hyenas in. Um, Couple nights we called them in, got them close, could never really get a shot, could never really see them that great. You could hear them, so you knew they were responding to it. And the problem is at this point, now we've got 4 or 5 different calls. So it's like, okay, which one actually works? Because they're coming in, but was it the first call we made, the second, the last, the combination of all of them? You
Yeah.
put a gap in between, too long of a gap, not long enough of a gap. So finally, like after being frustrated all these days, I was like, okay, we need to find a new location. We need to find a new strategy. We need to find an open area, because a lot of times we were hunting in woods and we are trying to find an open place and just hope they'd pop out. So we found another place that we could get permission to hunt on, and they had tags for hyenas. And I asked the PH, I was like, is there anything else that we could do that we're not doing that potentially could work? Because I feel like we've done the same thing every night with no success. He's like, I got an idea. And I'm like, I'm all ears. He's like, we got to buy a goat. And I'm like, really? He goes, yep. So we went to the village.
It sounded like Jurassic Park right now, where like the little like thing lifts up and a goat's chained to it, and you just look at the water waiting for something to show up. The ripples in
Totally.
the
So,
water.
oh yeah. So we went and got a goat. It's like $120, which seemed like a lot of money in Africa. But anyway, we bought a goat, had a long, like rope around him, and the guys that are helping us there, the trackers and all that, they tie it to a big log so he can't get away. So the goal is we had a big open space of plenty open land. We did have a lot of water there, so a lot of animals already come in at night to that. We've been seeing a lot of hyena tracks there, so we know there's hyenas there. We did do the drag again, is what they call it, where basically it's the intestines and all the other stuff. You drag it all around
Yeah.
that area
Smelly
with the
bits.
goal that like a hyena would come to where the goat's at.
Okay.
So, it's funny watching the goat because it was a big grassy field. So I think at first he's like, wow, this is an upgrade from where I came from. I've got a lot more grass. But after it started getting dark and we turned the call on, I could see him look in his eyes like, this isn't working out the way I hoped. So, I mean, it was kind of a cool night with thermals because like I said, there's water holes there, and there's not many water holes near that location, and we're near a national park. So, I mean, we start seeing giraffes, we start seeing
Oh,
like
cool.
elephants. I mean, we're seeing all kind of cool stuff. We're seeing like they have some kind of like rare dogs or whatever. I think they call them like spotted dogs or something like that. They're extinct, so you have to make sure you don't shoot those. They had jackals. We
Yeah,
had to
how
make
do you
sure we
tell the
didn't
difference
shoot them.
between that and a hyena? If you don't
Yeah,
mind me
yeah.
asking, I'm like, that sounds like a dangerous recipe. Are you ready to elevate your archery game? Summit Bowstrings delivers premium strings for all archers, crafted with bloodline fiber and BCY material stretched for unmatched consistency. Choose from 3 series: Hunter, Competition, and Summit. Each string is built bison tough with unique techniques for extreme durability and performance, ideal for both seasoned hunters and target archers. Experienced strings designed to handle any challenge. Visit summitbowstrings.com and use HSP10 for a 10% discount.
No, totally. It was helpful to have 2 guides there because I had a South African guide and a Zimbabwe guide. But so I'll tell you one thing that I think is super funny. So I have a pair of, I don't know, $4,000 Swarovskis, and I'm looking through them and I see nothing. It's like pitch black. And now, of course, you can see perfect through my Pulsar binoculars. But I'm telling you, those guides, the actual PHs, he's got a pair of binoculars, look like they cost, maybe $30. And I've
Yeah,
never heard of the name of them. And he's like,
got
there's a hyena.
Spider-Man on them.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, there's a hyena right there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like how in the world? And so I get up with my, my thermals, and he's spot on. So, for that night, we started seeing some hyenas come in, and we could spot them, and you could tell they were following the drag lines. And so, long story short is 2 come in that really pretty close, and they're really big. And they reminded me the female's typically bigger. So the goal was to get the female. But the struggle I'm having at this point is I'm looking through these thermals, which, it's like looking at the sun. And then when you put your thermals down and it's pitch black outside,
Yeah.
you can't see anything.
I've done some hog
Now, I
hunting, and
did
it's
mention,
just like that, where you're like, all right, hold on, I need about 30 seconds before I can even move because I'm going to trip. I can't see anything.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's just so hard to, so the, so I'm like trying to talk to these guys. Okay, like what's the strategy? Are we going to use the white light when he gets up closer and you spotlight it, or? And they said, well, I tell you what, we'll hold the thermals. We'll keep playing the call. He's clearly coming closer to the goat. Make sure you don't shoot the goat, but try to find through your scope, see if you can find the hyena. And I'm like, guys, I can't see anything. It's like pitch black. And then finally,
Yeah.
as it got closer, I could see a black blob, and it was just kind of moving. I could see it moving, and
Okay.
then of course I would check and make sure it's not the goat because I could tell the goat because he had a long rope on him, so he's got basically you could tell he's connected to it. So they're basically coming up to the goat.
Yeah.
And so they said, okay, as it gets closer, we'll use the spotlight. And I'm like, nope, I think I can see him. So, when I could see the black blob and I could put it on him, I shot, and I hit him in the back. It was actually a male, so I shot him in the back, and he kind of rolled around a little bit. I shot him again, ended up putting like, say, 3 or 4 rounds in him. He didn't go very far. But I wished that female never ran, and I was not using a silencer because Zimbabwe, they're illegal. The
Okay.
game warden actually has to be on the hunt with you if you're hunting for lion or leopard, and he was there, and he's like, dude, no one would care. We would have been fine with it. But I'm like, no, I don't want a video of me, shooting something in Zimbabwe with a silencer and then someone see it later and I'm in jail, in Zimbabwe jail, which doesn't sound good. But
Yeah,
anyway,
not my
right.
top 10 jails I want to visit. Yeah, that's for sure.
Totally. So I shoot the male, and if I had paid attention, I could have shot the female because it's almost like she didn't want to go away because he was still there. But at that point, I'm just so excited that, I shot a male and he's down and he's dead. And So we all kind of go out there and check him out. And he's like ginormous. He's huge. So they're like, all
That's
right.
awesome.
They're like, we got to keep him. I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to put him in a, full body mount in the office kind of thing. It looks super cool. And it's just hard to get a good picture of one at night, and you don't have great lights and cameras, but I'll have to email it to you. It turned out pretty well, but so that was super, super fun. I mean, even to the point that we got back up to where we were hunting from, where the call was, and at this point the call's off, and the female is still kind of hanging around at probably 150 yards, trying to figure out what's going on. If I had a thermal scope, I think I could have gotten the female too. So a little
Yeah.
disappointed there, but no, the hyena was super fun. I mean, I highly recommend it. And to clarify, it was a spotted hyena, which are the biggest.
Okay.
And like I said, I shot a large male wolf in Canada earlier this year, and it was significantly bigger than that. I mean, they're just
Oh,
big.
really?
And yeah,
Wow.
and like you said, when you open up their jaws, you can just tell there's a lot of power there. No, that was fun. I think the most fun is everybody else on the other groups. Like I said, we're trying to get one. It was kind of cool doing the whole calling to get him in. Big challenge there. You can't even see anything in the scope except a blob, so you kind of don't know what
Yeah.
you're shooting at. And I do
That's
feel like
so
the goat
crazy.
helped. Yeah, I don't know if the goat just helped because I tried everything else the night before, or I do think some movement and the smell. I mean, they're kind of trying to figure out, all right, what's going on over here, and probably
Yeah.
have eaten domestic animals before and thought there's a. But what's funny is when we left, the goat's fine. I gave it to the
That's one
PA.
of my questions I was going to ask.
Yeah, he's excited to get a goat. So I haven't told too many people that story because I could see my wife thinking, okay, what's going to happen to this goat? Why did you do this? And I'm like, the goat's
Yeah.
fine. I mean, goat was well protected. I was shooting a 375 H&H. I mean, there's a little chance anything was going to happen to him because anything that came big enough to kill him, I was going to want to kill.
Yeah, that's too funny. I'm trying to figure out in this story whether you're the T-Rex or the hyena is the T-Rex. But a couple questions. Why were you looking for the female versus the male hyena?
They just said the females are typically bigger.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
We just couldn't get it to come in closer. I read some articles that almost like they have the sex organs of a male and a female. I don't know, but the way I read it mostly was for whatever reason there's some hormonal release and the females actually get bigger. And I don't know if it's defending the babies or what it is, but yeah. So when it just didn't get as close as the male did, and
Mhm.
so. And it was like I said, it was so dark. If I'd had a thermal scope, which definitely I'll spend the money for next time, I could have been able to differentiate it, and I could have hit the female, obviously further than that other one probably
Yeah.
was 50, 60 yards, the
Is
male.
there a way to differentiate them besides just size? Like, is just the females are bigger? Or is there something
No,
like
that's a
some
good
telltale?
question. And of course at night, I don't know if I could have told. I mean, it was really cool. I wish I could send you a video. I mean, they almost have like this round shape on their head, like it's a true round, almost like a circle. So when you see them walking, it's instantly you could tell it's a hyena. It's kind of cool. I'm still sort of in shock how my professional hunter could use, a $3 pair of binoculars and he could totally pick out a hyena that I could see nothing through my binoculars.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's just some guys. Some guys just have better eyes than other ones, and then
That's
also
true.
just he does it every day, all day, right?
True.
You'd hope that he could figure that out.
True.
Couple more things. So at night, you started seeing giraffes and elephant, or was
Oh
this
yeah, yeah.
before? So everything's moving around at night. I would guess that most things button down the hatches because of the hyenas and cheetahs and lions out there, or is it just
Yeah.
everything wakes up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this is kind of an open area. It's right next to a national park. It's the closest water. Um, I was surprised. We had two different groups of elephants come in. I think the first one was three, and the next one was four. Then there was like five giraffes that came in. Um, it wasn't super hot. I mean, it was actually cold at night. I mean, I was putting as many layers on. I mean, it sounds weird me being from South Dakota. I got cold, and especially in Africa. But yeah, it was getting in the high 30s, low 40s with a little bit of wind at night. And so it was getting colder. So I don't know if it was because of the heat. They didn't want to travel as much during the day and they just came out at night. But that's a good question on the lions. Now the hyenas, it seems like, I mean, because that was the question I had with the goat is, okay, well, if
Yeah,
the hyenas usually eat something that someone else killed or something that's been dead for a while, how does the goat fit in? But then the more I researched it, it's like, no, they actually do some of their own killing. So that was probably a good idea to bring the goat.
yeah,
Um, and maybe just most of the elephants I saw were males together. Giraffes, I think, was both male and female. So maybe they just figured there's power in numbers, a lot of them together, and they were less worried about,
okay.
predators at night.
All right, I have one more last question, then we'll move on to the
Yeah,
next story because this is all new to me. I've never done Africa. But I've heard plenty
yeah,
of stories at this point, but none
sure.
as unique as yours. You said that they bought like cows. And they were putting cows out. Were these the live cows to attract the cheetahs and lions at the beginning of the story?
Yeah, good question. So, when I first got there, I mean, I don't know that I researched it maybe as well as I should have because I'm just glad I had enough ammunition because when I got there, they're like, dude, all the bait's got to come from you. And I'm like, I'm supplying the bait. And I tell you, I've been to South Africa twice and
Okay.
I love South Africa and I've shot a ton of animals there and people will argue with me, but it's basically high fence. Now, I mean, it's 20,000 acres, so you could argue it's not high fence. That's a lot of land, but at least they
Yeah.
know proportionally where the zebras are and where the wildebeest are and where the sable are. This was like 100% free range. And those animals, when you shot them, you didn't know where they were going. It was hard to
Yeah.
find them. To me, it was much more difficult. Like, so when I was hunting Cape Buffalo and shot one in Limpopo, he was kind of there by himself. So it wasn't hard to track him, wasn't hard to find him. But in Zimbabwe, there was like 400 of them. I shot one. They trampled all the blood, so I couldn't find him. And he just kind of fit in with the herd, and I never could find him. So it was a tough situation. It's much harder to me in a free range setting. But yeah, the donkeys. So here's the way it was explained to me. So we paid for baiting before I arrived. And
Okay.
with baiting, they can use domestic animals. But once I arrive, I have to basically start shooting Zimbabwe animals so they start making money. The government does. So they basically just they would go to the village and buy old cows and old, donkeys. And, the one spot where I shot a lion later, they put an entire cow and they put it up in the tree for a lion. And typically the lion is not up as high. Like they want the lion to be able to reach their arms, their paws up and grab it so that they're not like right on it. They have to work for it so it lasts
Yeah.
longer. So maybe it's like, I don't know, 15 feet off the ground, but they put an entire cow. So they killed it and just cut it up and,
Okay.
it was messy and they put it up there. They showed me a video of it. And that first night, I bet it was 15 lions, one male and the rest of them were females. They ate that whole cow. And then the
Wow.
next night they put a donkey out there, same thing. They ate the whole donkey. So typically they split it up. Like on the leopards, they use less, but for lions, they put a whole lot out there because the theory was sometimes if they aren't hungry, they would come eat and then come back the next night. And that's, or even if they did finish it, they'll come back there because it's free, easy food for the next night. So you go
Yeah.
back there. But
It's hard to
yeah,
turn down a free
so
meal.
yeah, yeah, no, totally.
Imagine this. You're deep in the wilderness. The sun is rising, casting golden light over rugged terrain. Your heart races as you navigate through the backcountry, knowing the perfect shot could come at any moment. This is where memories are made and stories are born. Ultralight rifles are often seen as Mountain West guns, but the Ridgeline FFT from Christensen Arms breaks that mold. This stellar, lightweight rifle is your perfect companion, whether you're in the backcountry or box blind, ensuring you never have to switch between your builds. With its aero-grade carbon fiber barrel and stock, the Ridgeline FFT is incredibly lightweight yet powerful. Thanks to its innovative side baffle brake, it reduces recoil even on a 5-pound gun shooting magnum calibers. It's like black magic. As a sub-MOA tack driver made in America, the Ridgeline FFT is for those who seek the thrill of the hunt and the joy of storytelling. Picture yourself returning to camp, Ridgeline FFT in hand, ready to share the day's adventures. Head to your local shop, pick one up. You've got to feel this rifle to believe it. Let the Ridgeline FFT be part of your hunting stories and the legacy you pass down. Well, that's awesome. Okay, I was curious if it was like the goat situation where they just like tied up a
No,
cow in a field or
no,
something, but
no.
okay.
They did say, because we were originally going to use the goat too also for leopard. So if we found some bait that got hit, then we could potentially put the goat there and the goat would probably kill it and put it up in the tree. And then it would kind of define it as its own. Like, in other words, we had some places where leopards, we could see tracks, but we couldn't get them up in the tree high enough to eat the meat. So part of the theory was, well, if the goat works in the hyena and we get successful there, then we can use it for leopard where we put it near a tree where we see tracks. And then hopefully the leopard will kill it, put it up in the tree, and then come back the
Okay.
next night and eat it. That was the problem, was we weren't seeing any leopards eating on the bait for the 3 weeks I was there. So that's why I had so many nights to hunt the hyenas, because the theory was you're putting bait up during the day, they're hitting the bait, and then you're hunting them at night. And we just weren't getting any hits on the bait during the
Yeah.
day or at night, so that the next night we could go out.
Okay. Man, that's interesting. Okay, very cool. It's also really cool. I don't know if I've ever even heard of anyone doing free range like African hunting. I always assumed it was, fenced, whether it was giant fenced projects or just smaller ones. But that's cool that you were in a situation like that, especially near like a national park.
Yeah, no, it's cool. No, so I'll tell you one thing that's super interesting I've never seen. So they had these huge power lines, and it looked like something out of like a big city. Like when you think of like Zimbabwe, Africa, you don't think of very sophisticated electrical poles, but they had what you would see it coming into a major city as far as power lines, and like the huge infrastructure to put the power up on these lines. And all the baboons would get on that at night because the leopards won't climb those metal poles. So you had thousands and thousands of baboons all over these electrical poles because they knew that the leopards wouldn't climb them. So I'm just thinking to myself, okay, there's got to be an abundance of baboons here, because they typically get killed at night by leopards, and that's not an issue here because they're all bright enough to go up these metal things that the leopards can't climb. So it was just kind of an interesting thing. I enjoyed getting like a video of it and stuff like that.
That's super cool. All right. Well, let's move on. Otherwise, I'll just keep asking questions. We won't get to more stories. So, what else do you got, Brandon? You got another one for us?
Yeah. So, when I first signed up for this leopard hunt, I got a call saying, "Hey, someone canceled out on a leopard hunt. They've already put half a deposit. I'll let you use that towards your hunt." And I was like, so it's kind of an incentive for making me want to come, because I wasn't really going to travel this year because my daughter started college, but. So he lured me in, and I said, "Well, hey, while I'm there, can you get me a lion tag?" And when I got there, I found out he got me 3 lion tags in 3 different areas. So,
Okay.
what I learned about this part of Africa is the tribes or the villages that own the land where you shoot the animal, they get the license fee. So it's a fairly significant fee that you pay to be able to shoot a lion. And I shouldn't say to shoot, it's once you shoot it, you pay this fee. It's kind of the license fee after you shot it. That money goes to the local village. So what that creates is everyone within a, say 30 or 40 mile radius hears you're in town hunting and that you have a permit in their area. They're all calling and they're all saying, "Hey, we found an elephant here and an elephant killed this." Oh, sorry, a lion. So they'll say, "We have a lion here. We have a lion there." They're all calling, trying to get you to come set up bait in their world because they want you to shoot a lion in their world so they get paid on it.
Yeah, they
So the reason why I
get
say
more money from that, like in a year, than they would from anything else that they can do economically, right? It's
100%. These guys, 100%. These guys are making $1.50, $2 a day, and that's if they're employed. I think they have an 85% unemployment rate. So, it's just poverty stricken. I asked them, "Hey, why are you guys not using a lawnmower to cut underneath these power lines?" And they're like, "It would cost more gas than we're spending on labor. We could pay these guys $1 a day, and they're out here chopping it with handheld things
and whatnot."
So. But anyway, we tell everyone we're hunting lion. We've got bait up. I told you that the first night we had a pretty good hit on some bait. We struggled to get that lion to come back. We hear lions at night, literally 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd wake up to lions in the distance. There was literally more lions there than there, in my mind, leopards, because we didn't see that many leopards. So that's when I said, "All right, I'm gonna settle in on lions." So there were so many lions. It was almost like, gosh, we probably got 15 baits out. They're hitting almost every bait. We're getting called from every village. It was just, at this point, it's like, okay, what's the biggest lion? Because that's the end goal, obviously.
Was it unsettling to hear them in the middle of the night, right? That sounds to me like maybe there's open walls or something like that. So you're not in a hard building and you're hearing lions all night long. How long of your 3 weeks before you were sleeping through the night?
Yeah, good point. So we did have like brick walls for the building structure, but it was like a straw roofs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a little bit unsettling just because it is a rare. When I first heard it, I'm like, I wonder what that is. And then the next morning, you're like, "Wow, did you hear the lions?" And I'm like, "Wow, is that what that was?" And what was interesting is, like I told you, we had a bait pile because I'm having to kill like giraffes and I'm killing like I'm killing all kind of stuff to create all the bait that we're putting out. Because every bait, they basically told me the cheapest meat's going to be the giraffe. So I shot 2 giraffes just to get enough meat to put out on these bait stations. So
Hmm.
they're throwing the legs out, the parts that we don't need in a pile. And we actually one morning went out and the lions were down there eating like, I don't know, 50 yards from where we're actually staying. Um, which, like you said,
Jeez.
it's a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
So we got a call about we kept getting a call about 2 lions that were walking together and that there was a bit of a blood trail from one of them. And so we called around and no one had a license to hunt lion in the recent time. And honestly, looking at these people, they're poor. I can't see them wanting to shoot a lion or even having the money to buy the bullets or the guns to shoot them.
Yeah. And do they
So
eat lion, or what would be the purpose, right?
yeah, and I'll tell you that later. What happens to that lion after
Okay.
I shot it?
Okay. Okay.
So, so we finally got a call, and so we started tracking 2 lions. So we started seeing the good thing about this soil type is that the roads are all sand, so you can see when they cross the road. It's perfect. And in places where there's not vegetation or leaves, because there was winter, so you had leaves falling down. Even a couple weeks ago it was winter, reverse of us. Um, Typically, you could still track animals, but the good thing, or I guess the bad thing, is one of them was bleeding. You could tell his paw was bleeding. So we surmised, we didn't think it was a snare because there's just not that many snares around there. That's more for
Okay.
poachers, and there's just not a ton there. So we thought maybe he fought with another lion. Um, but so we spent a couple days. So this is during the day tracking this set of lions. We're following them all over the place, and you have to be careful because the concern is, okay, the lion's obviously hurt. It was a fair amount of blood, so he's not going to be in a happy mood when you catch up with him. And the other premise is they don't travel as much during the day. So if you can follow their tracks during the day, you have a better chance of catching up with them.
Okay.
We did that for like 3 days. We could never really catch up with them. But I remember that, we usually got up really early in the morning to check the bait stations. We had cameras on all of them. We just had to there's not a good enough cell coverage. So you had to go check the actual SD cards on a laptop every morning. And that would give you kind of direction on what the rest of the day you're going to do. Um, so I remember I was getting up early one morning, go checking baits, not a whole lot of luck. And then I decided, hey, let's just take a nap. After getting up at 4 in the morning. And then someone knocked on my door and they said, hey, we got a call that somebody has seen 2 lions and is like recently, like within the last 20 minutes. And we know they don't travel as much during the day. So we think we can actually go get them.
Yeah.
So we get there and we find out it was the one that was bleeding because we could see the blood marks where it's been stepping. So this guy was from another camp. He was a worker there and he kind of showed us where he'd seen him last. And we're a little scared, obviously, so we're kind of walking up looking for them. And then my ears, I mean, I'm 52. I don't feel like they're horrible, but some of the older guys could actually hear the lion. I mean, actually, because I couldn't use the silencer, I had, ear things on that actually enhanced the sound to me. So I was
Oh,
shocked. But
cool.
the other guys are like, I can hear the lions. They're like growling, like we must be close to them. So that at that point, it's kind of jungly. So at that point, we're like, okay, hurt lion growling. They can hear it. We're getting closer to them. Maybe this isn't a good situation. So we went and got back in the truck. And, oddly enough, they got within maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet of us on the trail that we drove by. Because the good thing about where they were kind of in an area where there was a perpendicular road that connected. And the perpendicular part is they were kind of in the middle of that, sort of 90-degree angle.
Okay.
And it was sand roads on both ways. So you could tell if they had been crossing, if they left that area. So we went down another area and we got like super close to them. But the PH had told me earlier that if you shoot a female, it's like a $30,000 fine and you lose your tag for the male. So his heads up was, we got to make sure you're shooting the male. So just because you see a lion doesn't mean you start, sending lead down,
Yeah.
down range. So
Did they explain that at all? Is that just because if you shoot the girls, it's harder for them to maintain the population, which is their economy,
yeah,
or is there more to it than that?
I think so. I think that was the
Okay.
main thing. It did a good job of scaring me. So needless to say, I'm on top of the Jeep. It was in a stereotypical safari Jeep, and I'm up top. And my PH is driving, and of course he's on the other side of the road or on the other side of the vehicle because they have the same as the UK. We're on the other side of the road, but he's looking at me like, dude, why are you not shooting? What the hell's your problem? And I see two lions, but I could only see a small patch of them because it was so jungly. But literally, like he could almost reach out and touch them. I mean, 10 yards away or something. And I could
Ugh.
see one.
Ugh.
I could see one that was sort of like tan colored, and I could see one that was more almost like a white-tailed deer, a little bit darker. It was sort of like almost brownish, tannish. So one was much darker than the other one, and I had no idea which one was which because it was such a small surface area I was seeing on both of them. And so unfortunately, I didn't get a shot. I kind of got yelled at by the guys in the front seat who were down lower because they had a perfect view of them, and they're like, "Why did you not shoot?" And I'm just like, "Well, I couldn't tell what I was shooting at, what part of the body. I couldn't tell which was the male, which was the female." So at this point, I'm feeling super disappointed. Like, okay, what human being can say they got within 10 feet of a lion and didn't even pull the trigger? I mean, you're here hunting lions, you didn't even pull the trigger. So I was super, super disappointed in myself and kind of kicking myself. Um, and then we kept playing this cat and mouse with them. We kind of kept driving, get out and walk a little bit, drive, get out and walk. And like I said, we had sand on both sides of the road, so we knew that they hadn't traveled out. Um, and then in a different place, but a similar scenario, I look up and I see the female traveling. Like I could see her going down a path and I could tell it's the female. So I get my gun ready freehand. So again, this is Gunworks. They let me borrow it. So thanks to Gunworks, but they let me borrow their 375 H&H. They have like a corporate one for industry executives or whatever. So they let me borrow that. So I'm shooting it freehand and I'm watching through the scope as the female walks, knowing the male's probably behind her. As soon as he walks by, I hit him in the shoulder, and that's about all I see is I know I hit him in the shoulder. And like I said, Zimbabwe after that Cecil the lion got shot, now you're required to have an employee from the government there, and he's a super tall guy. He's carrying an AK-57, which seemed worthless where we were at, but he told me after that shot, he said that lion did a complete spin all the way around. Like it hit him that hard, it being that close, that he spun all the way around.
Oh,
So
like
we all
knocked him
knew.
off his feet, spun him around. Okay, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So he's like, that was a serious. We all at that point are like, okay, that was a serious hit. There's a potential that he's dead or getting close to dead, um, and the pH, again, I have two pHs. I say one's black Zimbabwean and one's white South African, and they both said, you know what, let's just wait about 20 or 30 minutes and just see what happens. And we
Yeah, right?
still obviously can check the road to see if they exit. So we're traveling up and down the road. We see that the male hasn't exited. They said the female ran off, so she's gone. The male, at that point, the male lion hasn't exited the highway and didn't run in the other direction. We couldn't really see or find him. So after 30 minutes, I mean, the assumption is, okay, maybe he's dead, because normally when you shoot an animal and they're in pain, they're making a noise or, they've got some kind of
Yeah.
reaction. And we're like, well, maybe he was already in so much pain from that paw being cut that, I don't know. So we're kind of like, I'm always impatient. That's just my nature. So I'm like, let's go figure it
You gotta
out.
be
So
patient with lions, Brandon. Come on. Come on. Come on. I understand the impatience thing. I'm there too. But you throw some predators at me, I become much more patient. That's what I'll say.
and honestly, like I felt sorry for the trackers. So the trackers, I mean, this is their job. I mean, these trackers are supposed to figure out where that lion went, and they got great eyes, and they're able to follow tracks. And but of course, they got no gun. So
And why not?
you
Just
can tell.
regulations? Like why wouldn't they have a gun?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Usually, only the professional hunter has a gun, and the actual hunter themselves has a gun.
Okay.
So we start getting out there and trying to track and find this lion. And the honest truth is we had too big of a crew. I bet there was 10 people with us. So, and they all wanted to come. So at this point, I'm like, it almost makes you more nervous because you don't know what's happening around you. And I don't know, I felt uncomfortable because there were too many people. If it was you and one person that's good with a gun and maybe a tracker who knows where they're at, to me, that's enough. But anyway, we got a lot of people. So we're walking around maybe 15, 20 minutes, just, I mean, almost like you're tiptoeing, like you're afraid something's going to hear you, but it's because you're scared, not necessarily, but you want to be able to react if you hear something.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because, we had to be. It's just, I think just deep down, we're like, this could be bad.
Yeah. What if it's not dead?
Totally. So I see his name is Jan. He is the South African African guy, black guy. He said, I see him talking and they speak Africano. He's talking to the South African and I see him pointing like this. And I hear him saying he's right underneath the tree right there in front of us. And I'm telling you, before he finished it, I heard, and that thing came out running. And I'll send you the video. It came running right at me. Um,
No way.
Yeah.
That,
So, yeah. So at this point, I'm thinking about, okay, what do we got going on? So I've got a 375 H&H fully loaded. I've got 4 rounds in it, one in the chamber, 3 in the mag. I've got 2 other professional hunters here. One shooting a 375 H&H, the other shooting a 458. I can't remember the lot, I think is what it's called. So that we're all fully loaded. I'm shooting soft points, Federals. So Federal kind of sponsors me. We partner with them. So I've got Federal soft points. They've got solids. So technically, I probably would have wanted solids at this point. I'm the only guy with a scope. So I'm thinking I would have probably wished I didn't have a scope. So at this point, I'm thinking all
yeah.
bets are off on me. So I use the scope, which I know has probably slowed me down, but I sort of lean into it and I shoot and I hit him right in the chest. And then I hear 2 more shots just like right after that, just boom, boom. So I'm like, okay, perfect. Like this thing's got to be dead. But what happened is, as soon as I hit him in the chest, it was enough because he was super close. It was enough for him to turn and start going in the other direction. Um,
Like
so
180 or like 90 degrees?
Yeah, 90 degrees. So he's like
Okay.
running at me, and then he basically takes a right hand turn, hard right after I hit him. He almost rolls him when I hit him right in the chest. Um, and so at this point, I'm like, okay, all 3 of us put a round in him. This dude has got to be dead. That's what I'm thinking. And of course, he took off again. And then, long story short, we ended up finding him behind a tree. Like we keep thinking, all right, we're going to walk on him. He's going to come out again. But we finally get up to him, and he's like just basically laying in front of a tree dead. And so, of course, we got pictures, and he was a big lion, older, missing one of his larger canines. I think they figured he'd be 14, 15 years old, so he's older.
Yeah.
Um, by him having a female with him, just one, he wasn't in his own pride, is what they call it. So he had been pushed out. So he probably, they typically the strongest fight, whoever's the strongest becomes like the one only man of that pride, and so he had been pushed out. But I
And maybe
talked
that
to
explains the bleeding. Am I getting ahead of
well,
us
I
here?
should I should explain that now. Yeah. So we look at him, and he did hit a snare, and it did get on his paw, and his paw had got infected, and it had squeezed his paw so much that it had gotten so infected and so bloody. And the reason why we are getting calls about this one is because he couldn't kill his own game. He was killing livestock in these villages because
Oh,
that,
okay.
that because typically I guess they fight and they also reach up off their back paws. It was his back right when it was cut, so he couldn't fight and he couldn't attack and he couldn't eat as well. So that's why he was killing a lot of local livestock. Um, so yes, he had a rather large cut in his leg, and they
Okay.
said he would not have lived much longer. It probably happened a week or 2 ago, and that he was going downhill from there. So it was actually a good thing. But okay, so here's what's interesting. So the tracker Jan, he's the one who also does the skinning. I said, how many bullets hit him in the chest? Like, how many bullets did we get in that lion when he was charging us? And he's like, only one. And I'm like, whose bullet was it? And I'm thinking to myself, I've only been hunting big game for a few years. These other 2 guys are professionals and they're older. Um, and he's like, the only bullet that went in his chest was yours. And I was like, how do you know? And he said, because it's a soft point, and he handed me the bullet. And I was like, wow. I'm like, what happened? And I couldn't tell until I saw the video later, which I'll send you. We hired a videographer with us. But in the video, one of the bullets actually hits in front of the lion by, I don't know, 10 yards and bounces up and nicks his face. And the other one, I don't know what happened, but he was nowhere near. Didn't even hit it. So I was the only guy to hit that lion and basically took him down. I might have been dead. I don't know.
You saved your own life. You didn't even know it.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I mean,
After counting yourself out too, you're like, nope, I'm just gonna fire one because I feel like I should. I'm being charged by a lion, and there you go. You saved your own life.
because I asked my PH, I'm like, did you know that my round hit him? He goes, oh yeah, I could tell by the impact, dude. You freaking hit solid. And I didn't have the follow up question of, did you know you missed? Because at that point I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I knew the other, and then when the other guy missed, I didn't ever really talk to him about it either. But So to go back to your question about the lions, the village that owned the land where we shot it, they got the license fee. It was like $30,000 they got,
Okay.
and then they get to determine what happens with the meat, and they wanted it, so they boil the fat and they make some kind of lathering cream or something. It makes them
Okay.
feel more powerful, like it gives them whatever the lion had inside them. But they
I
literally,
can understand that. That's how
yeah.
it would make me feel, I think.
So, so, yeah, they took that whole line, man. I mean, of course, we caped it, and I'll get a full body
Yeah.
mount, and one day it'll probably be here at Silencer Central headquarters. But yeah, they took the whole thing, and they said they eat 100% of it. I mean, just being there for the 3 weeks, even the giraffes I shot, they were eating their intestines. I mean, they would hang it up on clotheslines so it could dry out. I mean, they literally eat. The only thing that I shot all week that they would not eat was the hyena. Everything else we mostly used for bait, but any leftover parts they would 100% eat, which
Gotcha.
surprised me. But hey, it's each their own, right?
Yeah, no, I've heard that in general you can't bring the meat home, so most of the time it goes to the local tribes. I didn't think that would be the case for like a predator or something like that,
Me
but
too.
I don't know. Do you know if they have? I don't know why they wouldn't, but like I think it's trichinosis, right? That's what predators have here,
Oh
where you got to
yeah.
cook the
No,
meat.
I don't. I don't know. I didn't even think about it. It caught me off guard, and they go, "Yeah, they want it." And I'm like, "What do they want it for?" They're like, "Dude, they'll eat it." I'm like, "All right, fair enough. They want it. It's their land. We
Huh?
shot it. They made out, right? We got them they got them the money for shooting it. Then they're not having their livestock killed anymore, and then they also got the meat, and they had. I
Yeah,
think the problem was it's a pretty big village, so I think they were fighting over how we going to split this lion up.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get a jar of that lion cream? Sounds
No,
gross when you say it that way, but yeah, I'd be interested.
I know that Jan, the tracker, he asked for some of it too. So I know they brought some of the extra fat home, and they were going to make some themselves when they got back to South Africa. So yeah, it's just interesting, sort of the different cultural norms there, and but I
Yeah.
get it. If it's truly poverty stricken and there's meat there, hey, let's find a way to figure out how to eat it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Especially there's so much wild game, but it does make more sense to sell that wild game to Westerners who are willing to pay for it and get some of that money because I bet they don't have any other form of economic stimulus out there. It's crazy. I think
Yeah, I
a
mean,
lot of non-hunters don't realize the benefits to these things. They just hear, I paid money, I shot an exotic animal, but there's so many benefits to the local, I don't know, ecosystem or whatever you want to
oh
call it.
yeah, I mean there was probably 30 people on the camp that were all there kind of on my dollar. I mean it wasn't expensive because they don't make that much, but still that was a job for them. Like I
Yep.
said, I think it's an 85% unemployment rate. So you had, a lady doing the laundry, a lady doing the cooking, a guy helping with the cooking. They were chopping wood so we had fires because it was cold at night. And I mean there's and people skinning them, and yeah, it was pretty involved. There was a lot of people. It was too many people, but I get it. If it's only adds an extra $100 for 3 weeks, then bring them on, or $30 or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, that sounds like an amazing trip from all the different things. I really do want to see the picture. You said you have a video of that lion charging.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I had a
Is it on
videographer there with.
YouTube or do you have to send it to me?
I'll have to send it to you.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I paid this guy, and I do think one thing that was impressive is the PH I went with from South Africa. Ranchero is the name of their place in Limpopo, but he said that's one of the first, because he does a lot of Cape Buffalo hunts, and he said normally that when you have that many people in a group and you go on a Cape Buffalo hunt and it starts charging, about half of them or a quarter of them run, or you can tell they're out of there. But he's like, man, even though we had like 8 to 10 people out there with that lion that charged us, nobody backed down. The camera guy was right on the whole thing.
Yeah. That's because everyone there was like, "Oh, Brandon's getting eaten. I'm fine."
Yeah,
You don't have to be the fastest. You just got to be faster than at least one other person, and that
totally.
was and that was you.
Yeah, that's what I told him. I said, hey, I grew up in the South. They didn't ask the white guys to run. And I'm surrounded by these black guys, and I know they're quick.
Oh, that's too funny, man. That's too funny. Well, Brandon, I know you have limited time with you. 10 or so more minutes before I'm sure you have plenty of other things to do. Do you have any more stories you want to tell us? Or we can always save them for another day and get you back on here. It's your call, sir. I'll listen all day.
Yeah, no, interesting. Maybe I'll set one up for you. So what I didn't tell you is every night that we would, go out and try to get these hyenas, we would also turn on the call for the lions to see if
Hmm.
we could bring some lions in. And the last night I was there, we had been to this property before, and we would typically call for a few hours and then just kind of out of curiosity see if anything would come up. And so the last night, we didn't bring the call, and we just thought, well, we've been calling here for the last few nights, hyenas, and at the end we would turn on the lion call, and we kept hearing the landowner saying that lions were coming. So that night we went out there with a spotlight, and I found a second lion. It was a ginormous lion, and they measured it. Like, I guess the Game Fish and Parks has to take the measurements and all the paperwork to the Game Fish and Parks office. They called it the man camp. It was the largest lion shot in Zimbabwe this year. It was over 10 feet from the tip of his nose to the end of his tail. And that,
No way.
yeah, it was pretty amazing. I mean, it did honestly help to obviously have thermal to see, because we used a spotlight to find him, but then able to have the thermal to kind of see, okay, where's he going, and have we scared him off, and which direction is he going? And it's kind of weird, like in that stock mode too, when you're going after a lion, because they could easily turn around. I mean, I read some stats; they can run a 100-yard football field in 9 seconds. So
Jeez.
if they got a problem, they're coming after you. But
Right?
no, I mean, I would encourage people to go to Africa. I mean, I'd say I got hooked on it by going to South Africa, where you could get a lot of different, species and a lot of different, experiences, and then sort of transition to something that's a little bit more free range after that, whether it be Zimbabwe or Botswana or even Tanzania. And yeah, I'm ready to go back for leopards. So that's the next thing I got to figure out how to do is get leopards. I've been looking at, should I do dogs, where you can kind of pick and say, okay, no, that one's too small. Let's get the dogs on something bigger. Or do
Yeah.
you keep doing the thing I did this time, where you keep baiting and hope you finally catch up with one? Most of my friends have to go 4 or 5 times before they shoot a leopard, and I thought I'd be the guy. I'm always the lucky guy. Like I said,
You
I
are
shot
the lucky guy, Brandon. You survived the lion attack. Okay.
totally. And like I told you, I shot 2 wolves in January within 20 minutes of being in the blinds, because you get 2
Yeah.
tags in Ontario, and they're like, "You're the luckiest guy ever." So of course I'm thinking I'm gonna be the lucky guy on the leopards, but unfortunately I wasn't. But I'll have to go back. But no, I would encourage everyone to think about going on some of these kind of crazy hunts. I some people in my office think I'm crazy, but it's quite an adrenaline rush there, and it creates a scenario where you've got to be 100% confident in yourself and believe in yourself, even if deep down you have doubts. You can't show it. You gotta,
Yeah, that's the
because I
truth.
think they'll sense it. You got to be 100% all in. Like, dude, you're not gonna win this. This 375 H&H is not gonna. It's not gonna feel good.
Yeah. Gosh, man, I believe you. All right, Brandon. Well, thank you, man. It was
Yeah.
wonderful to hear your stories. I don't know if you want to share any of your social media, your company's social media, maybe just sort of anything cool you guys got coming down the pipe, and share that with my
Yeah.
listeners.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. So, Silencer Central, we're the largest silencer dealer in the country. I got stores in 42 states, which allows me to mail the silencer to your front door. So look on our website, call our team. It's just silencercentral.com. We're shipping 2 to 3,000 silencers a day out of here to every state in the
Wow.
country where they're legal. So 42 states is where they're legal. We make it easy for people. We do all the paperwork for them, and we just send it to them digitally to kind of DocuSign. So we spent the last 20 years sort of fine tuning it, making it easy. My insight for working gun shows over the last 20 years was, people are willing to buy a silencer if you make it easy for them. And
Yeah.
I would say the big news on silencers that is almost like hard for me to comprehend, even though it's been happening since about March or April, the turnaround time on silencers. The turnaround time has gone from 9 to 10 months to we're actually getting them real time. So my staff is submitting people's
Wow.
request for a silencer to be transferred to them, and we're getting them approved the same day. Our average time is about 2 to 3 days.
No way. I always
It's
just assumed it
insane.
was a year-long thing. What do you think is the reasoning behind why it's dropped so drastically?
I went and met with the ATF to figure the answer to that question, because, of course, that impacts my business. Because if this
Yeah.
is sustainable, then I need to build a bigger building. And
Yeah.
if it's not sustainable, I need to, not spend any money and put a lot in the bank, right?
Yeah, just wait for it to go back to where it normally is. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I went up there and met with them, and I'm convinced they spent a lot of time preparing for this over the years. And then what they figured out worked is they do your background check. So as soon as they get your background information from us, they submit it to FBI, and if it comes back approved, like 71% of all applicants get an approval instantly. So if you get an instant approval, they approve it instantly. There's
Wow.
29% that if you've ever been arrested before, they typically have to look and see why. And if there's a felon with a similar or same name and a similar date of birth, then they have to check it out manually, and that's what slows it down. But basically, they just it's one of those things that they used to get the applications in, and they would say, hey, it's going to be 9 months before we review it, so let's not do a background check until then. And the analogy they used for me is, if you go to a fast food restaurant and you say, hey, I want extra pickles and mayo and double lettuce and 2 tomatoes, the previous ATF was making you sit in line, and then everyone in line was backing up behind you, and that just became years of, months worth of waiting. Yeah. Now what they do is they tell that customer, hey, you're a special order, so that means you need to go park over in the parking lot in this space, and then they work all the others that are behind them that are easy. So they're focusing on, you got a double cheeseburger, you got fries, whatever. Those are easy. They just do those instantly. And then the one that's taking a little bit longer, they have to do manually, they put them off to the side. So they don't let the slow ones slow down everybody. They're processing the real time. So, hey, it's been a huge boom for Silencer Central. I think it reduces an obstacle. Consumers hate to pay for something, have to wait to get it. So to get a scenario where, we let people pay while they wait, and that was a good sales pitch because, hey, no interest, nothing. We'll let you pay while you wait because we get it. Sucks to pay, to have to pay in advance. But now it's almost real time where we're getting approved average of 2 to 3 days. But I do think it's sustainable because they didn't add any additional headcount to make that happen. And I feel like they've set the bar showing, because for years they said we're going to do a 90-day turnaround, and now they're significantly beating that without any additional funds. So how do you go to Congress or the Senate and say, hey, we were able to do it without any additional headcount. We were able to get turnarounds in a few days, and now we can't do it anymore because we need more money. It's like, okay, well, walk us through that a little bit more,
Yeah, I was hoping maybe they took some of those 30,000 IRS agents that they're hiring and put a couple over there, but I guess not. So
no, true. And I keep reading about that. They're having a hard time finding those folks to come work for them, which is good.
Yeah, they'll probably end up auditing themselves if you hire that many. Well, sir, it was a pleasure meeting you. It was great to hear your stories. I really do appreciate it. Maybe we'll have you back on again here in the future and hear about your next Africa trip.
All right. Yeah, I love it. That sounds great. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you. All right, guys, that's it. Another couple stories in the books. Again, Brandon, thank you for coming on the podcast, man. It was a pleasure to meet you. I do plan on going up and visit him. Hopefully have a beer with you soon. But to the listeners, guys, thank you guys for tuning in. Do check out the show links. I got a link to Silencer Central, most of their socials, everything you need to know there. They do, again, make a really cool product. And then, of course, guys, if you have any stories and you want to share them, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you, hear the stories that you have, and share them with my listeners. And then again, one last time, beyond that, guys, please do get out and vote. November's coming up quick. Take a friend who doesn't typically vote. I'm assuming they align roughly with what you're going to vote for. And let's make sure that everything goes right here in November for this country. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much. Brandon, thank you again. Now, guys, get out there, make some stories of your own. Thank you.